Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the second day at Black Tech Fest. My name is Temi Odukoya, and I am the VC and Startup Lead at Color and Tech. I am super excited to be talking to you all today and introducing you to our panel. We have a great panel of really influential VCs within the European and actually global venture space. So we're really excited to be speaking to them. So we've got three panelists. And firstly, I would like to introduce you to Czech Warner. She is the founding partner at Ada Ventures. Ada Ventures have invested in the companies such as Papier, Furly, and the babysitting app Bubble. She's also the co-founder of Diversity VC and the Future VC internship program. Czech, do you want to say hi to us and tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Temi. And it's amazing to be here talking about this really exciting and important topic. So Ada Ventures, which is the fund that I co-founded with my partner, Matt, is focused on investing in overlooked founders and overlooked markets. We basically believe that there are massive opportunities that are going completely left on the table because venture capitalists are not open to investing in people who come from absolutely anywhere. And we believe that the founders of the next 10 years who are going to build the next generation of unicorn startups are going to be the ones that don't look and sound like the ones from the past. So I will tell you a bit more about Ada and what we do a bit later, but I also co-founded an organization called Diversity VC about 4 years ago. It's a voluntary organization, it's a non-profit, and we have done a lot of work around diversity and inclusion for the venture capital industry. So two key things that we've done recently are last year we set up something called Future VC, which is a free internship program where we had people from all kinds of backgrounds working in funds across Europe. We did that this year. We had actually 480 participants globally, and we now have multiple people working full-time in venture who've come through that program. The second thing we've done is we've launched something called the Diversity VC Standard, which is a certification for VC funds to show that they are doing absolutely all they can in best-in-class work around diversity and inclusion. So I can talk about that more shortly, but that's a bit about me.
Awesome, thank you so much, Czech. Next up, we have Ben Narison, who's a partner at NEA. NEA is one of the largest VC funds in the world. I think in total, they've raised about 20 billion across their 16 funds that they've ever raised. And this, in their last fund alone, they raised about 3 billion. They've invested in the likes of Robinhood, Cloudflare, and Casper mattresses. I'm sure you've all seen the ads on the tube. So I would love to hear from Ben now.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. You're right. NEA is probably the largest traditional venture firm in the world, about 26 billion of total committed capital. We're currently investing on a fund 17, which is a $3.6 billion fund covering a wide array of technology, literally anything from, we have two teams. We have a traditional tech team and a med tech team. And really happy to be here because this is a topic that's quite close for me. You know, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, which for those of you that haven't spent time in the United States is a part of the South that is sort of more gender diverse than, or sorry, more ethnically diverse than many areas. When I moved to California, people talk about diversity. I thought, well, okay, it's a very different set of diversity here than I've been exposed to, and I wonder how that can change. And it's nice that we're finally at a place where for literally my entire life, I have seen efforts to attack the challenges of creating more diverse opportunities in a variety of ways, and they've always seemed to sputter. But now I'm seeing material change pretty much everywhere. I mean, this is not just a topic of conversation anymore, this is a topic of action. And I think that's going to make us all better and stronger. You know, I'll make a final comment, and obviously we can dig into all these things later, but you know, you'll see on my little note here, my name, and next to it, www.pitch-ben.com. Started this years ago because it's always been my goal to have anybody anywhere be able to pitch me an idea. I fundamentally don't care anything about what you look like, where you came from, what I care about is you're rocket ship smart, driven, have a great idea in a huge market. And that can come in any flavor or form. I always said that I would love one day to fund a purple octopus so I could prove to the world that it truly doesn't matter. It just matters that you are a tenacious, smart, driven person. And I think that now we're finally at a place where more people are starting to realize that that is true. Anybody can create a phenomenal business. And I hope the venture community all gets supportive of that reality.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ben. And lastly, but not least, we have Nicholas Enstrom, who is a partner at Atomico, which is a European Series A VC. They've invested in the likes of Infarm, Peakon, and they've also invested in Nicholas themselves, Skype. Nicholas is the founder of Skype, which everyone should be familiar with. So I'd like to hand over to Nicholas.
Yeah, thank you so much. And super excited to be here, such an important event. And we started Atomico 2006, because we thought that venture capital needed to be disrupted, needed to be changed. And the founding principle, one of the founding principles we had and founding reasons was that we thought that great companies could come from anywhere. And that was kind of our tagline under the Atomico name. And the way we thought about it initially was that it's not only Silicon Valley that can create great tech companies. We thought that technology and entrepreneurship needs to flourish all around the world. So the initial mission and initial thought process we had was more geographically and with a focus on Europe, but also in other places in the world. Over the last several years, we have been also woken up to the fact that we as an industry and we as a firm have not done enough good work on diversity. And I think that, I know for myself, and I also know with the other people in our team, we are inclusive in our mindset and we believe in diversity, but we didn't do enough about it. And a few years ago, we said that's not good enough. We need to be much better. We need to move from actually, thinking diversity is good to acting on it. And as a venture capital firm, we are, in all of us who are in venture, we have such a privileged position in terms of shaping the tech industry and the future. So I also think that we have an important role to play, but we need therefore also to act. And we started a few years ago, focusing since 2017 to say we need to be much better on diversity. And the first thing we focused on was gender diversity. And this year we're taking the steps also to we need to broaden that diversity to also the ethical diversity, but also all types of diversities as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nicholas. I'm glad that you mentioned about, checking yourselves as a VC, because that's exactly what our conversation is about today. And I think a topic that we should address is, why are we having a conversation that is pertaining to the Black community, the Black funding gap, without having any Black partners on the call, with a panel that is of non-Black investors? I think that's an important question, and it's definitely a discussion that I've seen popping around on Twitter and here and there about why this panel was chosen. And I think from my point of view, and Color in Tech, the research clearly shows that the onus right now of driving change within the tech and venture community has heavily been placed on women and people of color. So already the underrepresented are being forced to be the game changers. They've been the ones planning events, doing panels, creating communities, driving initiatives. But at the end of the day, the sad reality is that 9 times out of 10, when a Black founder wants to pitch their idea, they're actually pitching to a room full of white people, and usually white men. So this conversation is a way for us to almost flip the switch and let the underrepresented and the women sit down and listen in at a conversation and hear what the people with the money, the people writing the checks, have to say about what they're doing to change the Black funding gap. So with that being said, I like to open up with kind of our first discussion point and our first question. And we'll start off with Czech. But I would love everybody to share their personal reflections of the events of the last 6 months. So we've entered this 2020 crazy year with COVID. We've entered with, we've also midway through the year, we experienced the resurgence, I would say, of the Black Lives Matter movement. Although it's been happening and we've been talking about it, I think this is the year that the world has really stopped to listen. So please reflect, give your personal reflections on the last year and why diversity is important to you.
Thanks, Temi, and thanks for raising that really important point as well. I think it's been, for me, very humbling and very confronting the last 6 months. I, in some ways, have thought, oh, I'm actually doing quite a lot on this topic. You know, I co-founded Diversity VC. I've co-founded a fund that's really focused on investing in overlooked founders. You know, I'm doing all the right things, kind of thing. And when Black Lives Matter, you know, had this resurgence in the killing of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and all of the sort of repercussions that happened across the world, I think it revealed to me that, first of all, I needed to go much, much deeper than I had done. I have done some, you know, really great training around privilege and understanding my role in this conversation. But I think the second thing it showed me was that I will never understand. I'm a white, privately educated woman in so many ways, have had so many privileges, and there's just so many things about this topic that it was revealed to me that I just would never understand. And I think the third thing is it revealed my complicity in this. And I think this is important for everyone in the world, but also in the position that Nicholas, you know, has said we are in, which is a position of privilege, a position of influence. We are complicit in contributing to the structures that have created the racist society that we live in. So it was a very difficult set of realizations, I think, to be confronted with, but really, really important ones. And I think for our fund, you know, we were actually called out by somebody in our community who said, look, you haven't said enough about this. You know, even just after the events of the killing of George Floyd, you know, someone who we trust said, look, we need to see more from you. And that was really fantastic, actually, because they were 100% right. It wasn't enough for us just to be doing, you know, our work and donations and things like that in the background. It was really important to say something. So we learned a lot through that. And I hope that we can continue to sort of use that to fuel us to keep doing much more to advance the Black community, and particularly Black founders and investors.
Awesome. And I think that level of kind of not feeling like you're trying, but you can never do enough, is one that a lot of people have felt. Even people in the Black community, sometimes it's quite, there's a lot of, I guess, pressure and kind of even the toll it takes on your mental health to think about the atrocities and how you've had to live a life in this particular way. So yeah, it's a really interesting conversation to have. And so that's why I want to bring it back to Nicholas now. So at Atomico, how has this change and this kind of the move towards more diversity and being louder about the work we're doing at diversity? You mentioned how you realized that at Atomico that enough wasn't being done. Could you please let us know, like, what changes have been put in place now?
Yeah, so we when we kind of, as I said, when we kind of really kind of had an alarm clock a few years ago, and we focused on gender diversity. So we started to act, and we felt in the beginning, we felt really uncomfortable to go out talking about it, because we looked internally in our firm and in our portfolio companies and said, gee, we haven't done a good job. So we didn't feel that we were in a position to go out and tell others what to do. We needed to start looking at what we are doing. And so having been focused now on on diversity for a few years, we made some good progress, I would say. But as I said already, our focus initially was on gender diversity. So the events of this year was again another kind of wake-up call for us. It's like, hey, we need to really do much more also on ethical background and for people of color. And both internally and the way that how we look at these things is that what can we do when we come to kind of practical activities. One is internally in our team. We can make sure that we have an investment team who are sourcing opportunities and recommending and making investment decisions who are diverse, so we don't have all white men. And the other thing we can do is to train ourselves so that we have, when we are reviewing opportunities, we have also have unconscious bias training. That's another thing we can do. The third thing we can do is in our sourcing activities, really look for opportunities in different areas in different pools of where we can find founders from different communities. We can find much more diverse founders. So those are kind of activities that we have done and try to be much more open and inclusive. One program that we just launched recently was an office hours program with everyone in our investing team, including myself, are committing to office hours where we can meet with founders from different from underrepresented backgrounds, from communities, but we can, they can just come to us and ask us questions and we can give good feedback. But I also see that when we set objectives for ourselves, we can also make a difference. What 2017 to now, we have gone a long way in terms of gender diversity. So we now 45% of our investment team are females. So up from, I think from something like 20%. When we look at our portfolio, we're measuring it. The one measurement we have is, again, and this is what we need to refine, and this we're working on that, but we're looking at how many companies have founders from who are not white men. Yeah. And today, in the current portfolio, that is 25%. Our target is 40%, but we're not there. But if we don't set a really high target, we need to be ambitious and push ourselves. And then I think we can get there. But we need to also work with a really early, as you said, we're investing in Series A primarily, but then also Series B and C. So if we can help that really early, that company creation stages and encourage people who doesn't get encouraged to start companies, then those companies will float through that we can invest in, but not maybe like right away, but in a year or so. Yeah. So we are trying to engage with different communities which are encouraging people of color to start companies. And that's what your event here is so important.
And I've seen that you recently partnered with us, Color and Tech, but also the likes of YSYS, so yes. People working at the grassroots, which is what I think
exactly.
But yeah, so on that point, one of the comments I often see and I often hear when speaking to founders is that investors are pledging to do better to support Black founders, but are not willing to do so at the early stages. And that makes it hard for such founders to grow their businesses and make it to the next stage. And I would like to bring this to Ben now, because although NYE is US based and global based, the US seems to have done a better job than Europe at funding Black founders. There's still a long way to go, but they're definitely they're doing better than Europe. So I want to hear what's going on in the ground in the US around this.
Well, I think I led into this a little bit with, I come at this from a slightly distinct perspective. I grew up in a community where it was 50-50 black and white, pretty simplistic. And if you think about venture in the United States, it is heavily concentrated in Silicon Valley in California. And then you've got a market in New York, and historically had a market in Boston. If you look at the makeup of backgrounds in California, when I first moved to California, it was like, okay, this is the whitest state I've ever seen. Now, there's a lot of other types of diversity. I'll give you an example of this. I was talking to a friend of mine who became the very first Indian general partner. He worked at NEA before I worked there. And, you know, he talked to me a lot about the prejudice he encountered as an Indian in the United States, which was totally surprising to me. In fact, he said to me at one point, Ben, you don't understand, you're a white guy. I was like, I'm pretty tan. I'm basically as tan as you are. And I grew up in a community where I'm half Jewish. And I will tell you, where I grew up, there were not a lot of Jews. So I can never pretend to identify with the Black community. I can't get to that level of understanding by any means, but it is not absent of me to have experienced pretty aggressive prejudice. And so what I've noticed is that the conversations have become far more fluid. You know, I think much like Atomico, we took a very proactive effort to address gender diversity first and have had some great success there. I do think that you are seeing more Black entrepreneurs being funded for multiple reasons. So for one, yes, there's a lot more people are paying attention. At the end of the day, you need to have folks pitching you great ideas though, right? And so one of the things I'm very focused on individually, and I think we as a firm are also focused on, is access. Whenever I talk to entrepreneurs around the world, and I've always made it a habit that whenever I go to a conference, I used to come to Europe quite a bit. Not so much anymore. I don't think we're even allowed there unless I fly in through Croatia, which is a beautiful spot, by the way. So I'm happy to fly in through Croatia. I would go and I would work with the conference presenters and I would present on stage, and I would always stay afterwards and listen to anybody that had an idea. And I'd set up an office hours session. I've always wanted to have anybody be able to come up and talk to me. That is a great way to get exposed to a lot of different types of people. But I will tell you that from a sort of, if you look at the perspective of who's pitching you, part of it is if you have a very small amount of people from any group pitching you, you're going to have a much smaller chance of converting within that group. I'll see about 2,000 pitches a year and I'll fund a handful. So if I see 2,000 pitches a year, in the past, you know, I'd say a dozen of them would be from Black founders. You know, that's a tiny, tiny number. Now we're seeing more because as attention is drawn to this for all the reasons we're talking about it, more people are becoming more proactive. They're getting interested in entrepreneurship, you know, and so that's been useful. I think everybody wants to pay attention right now, and I think they are taking action. But at the end of the day, what I would encourage any investor to do is to provide ways for easy access. You know, that again goes to my whole pitch Ben thing. I want anybody in the world can pitch me with video, and I will promise to give them feedback. You've got to have, but you do have to see an enormous number of companies to get to the ones that you can fund. And I'll make this last point. Both of you addressed this. The earliest stages are where it's most likely that you can have the most impact. NEA is predominantly Series A, B, C, right? My history is 10 years as a seed investor, and I'm trying to find ways to have more opportunity there. That is the place where you have the most chance of giving diverse entrepreneurs an opportunity, because in essence, what you're doing is sort of planting that seed of capital to allow a proof or disproof of a thesis, which when it works, bluntly, no VC in the world cares if it's working, who you are. If you went from 0 to 10 million of revenue in a year, you could be a fluid speaking puppy dog and people are going to want to fund you. But it's the trick of getting that proof. And so I think that, you know, you are seeing more aggressive efforts. We had a woman that worked for us, a young Black woman who started a group called Black VC to try and encourage, you know, ways to get more exposure for entrepreneurs. There's multiple groups that are explicitly going out and reaching out to say, hey, Black entrepreneurs, let us help you get in front of venture capitalists. So I think that the first thing that is being worked on that is going to be the most successful is access. And secondarily, that the earlier in the process you go, the better that's going to be.
So I'm really conscious of the time, and I wanted to come on to you, Chet, because I think that access conversation speaks to what you just announced yesterday or 2 days ago with the angels at Ada, and also Nicholas, you have the Atomico Angel Program. So Chet, do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're a pre-seed fund, so we are very early. We are writing the first check before a product's even launched, but yet we don't feel that we're early enough. So we have gone even earlier than us by actually launching an angel program yesterday. And this is, about an evolution of our scouting network. So when we started Ada, we believe very strongly that the best ideas would come from places that we didn't know where to look for them. So actually we built a network of 50 people who run diverse communities to bring us ideas. And if we end up investing in them, which we now have done in 2 cases, we pay them both a £5,000 upfront fee and a carried interest as well. And that has created a really amazing spread. We see now over 50% of our deal flow comes from founders, comes from teams who have at least one female founder. It's very ethnically diverse as well. And we've now taken that to the next level, which is actually taking £250,000 of our fund and actually allocating it to 5 of those people so that they can invest £10,000 checks in 5 companies over the course of the year. And obviously, Atomico have a similar program, slightly bigger. But I think one thing I really want to sort of shout out to Atomico for is that Atomico were the first investor in Ada. Atomico are doing this, and they're doing it with real conviction before anyone else. And that was so meaningful for us. We didn't have any other LPs at that point, and Atomico put the first check into the fund and have been an amazing partner to us. And I think it is really, really critical that it's not just about support of earlier stage organizations, it's actually about capital and also using your influence and making and validating them. Because once we had Atomico, we went around to everyone else and said, we've got Atomico. And that made people listen to us, which was really critical. So yeah, that's what we're doing with the Angel program. And we're super thrilled actually that 2 of the angels are David and Nicole, who are both Black investors, which we think is a really, really important part of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and Atomico I know has Andy on their angel program. Yeah. So that's amazing. Unfortunately, time is up, and I wish we had another 20 minutes to an hour, because this is a conversation that has just so many depths and layers to it. I think what I can say we've taken from this session is VCs, put your money where your mouth is. Black founders are tired of being advised, and they need funding. And I think that's where the difference is. And that's the only way you're going to have large unicorns and techs are really solving worldwide issues and being a tech company for all. But yeah, so on a final note, I really do want to shout out some real game changers within the European VC Black founder space. We've got Angel Investors Cornerstone Partners. We've got the team at Impact X who are doing an amazing job. We also have 10X 10 by 10 who just published the Black Report with Google, and the likes of Extended Ventures, and so many more who are really trying to make a change and close that Black funding gap. Please follow us on socials for more of this conversation. I'm sure we're all going to be discussing this a lot more later on. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Black Tech Fest. Thank you to Color and Tech and Informa Tech for having us. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Stebbing, co-CEO of Accelerate Her, an organisation that exists to address the underrepresentation of women in business, and more specifically within the tech sector. I hope you're enjoying the amazing inaugural Black Tech Fest. If you'd like to continue the B&I conversation, we'd love to invite you to attend our very exciting live pitch competition on Wednesday, the 25th of November, for diverse women founders. I'm thrilled to announce that applications are now officially open. Together with Facebook, Female Founders Offline, and Henkel X Ventures, we're offering one exceptional diverse woman founder £25,000 worth of Facebook ad credits to take their marketing campaign to the next level, as well as £5,000 of free, equity-free cash to help grow your startup. In a year like no other, we know that the road to reach gender and racial parity is long and difficult, so we're working hard to help place more capital in the hands of women founders from underrepresented groups. I'm now going to hand over to Charmaine Hayden, partner at Good Soil VC and co-founder of Female Founders Offline, who will speak briefly about some top tips to make your application stand out to the judges and some more specific criteria to apply. Very best of luck and hope to see you next month.
Hi everyone, we're really excited to bring this competition to the community at Black Tech Fest. Our criteria for applicants is as follows. Your business is headquartered in the UK, you're a digital business with a product or service to sell, you're at pre-seed or pre-series A funding stage up to 1.5 million in revenue if bootstrapped, you have at least one active client or pilot, you have an ambition to grow or scale, and you are incorporated or trading for less than 3 years. Good luck.